now it's after party time. I think you should stick around. The topic is WTF, our NFTs.
So is it a craze? Is it the real deal? What are NFTs anyway? Should we even care? So we're joined this evening with Craig Cosson of Chuck Jones Gallery, John Stock of Corridor, Gary Simmons, editor-in-chief of The Licensing Letter, and we're going to ask these industry professionals a few questions and dive deeper into the crypto world as we explore this new platform of buying and selling. So first of all, thank you all for joining us, and I say we dive right into it. So Gary, we're really talking about two things here, digital art and NFTs. So can you kind of let the audience know the difference between the two of them?
Sure, yeah, the art obviously is the piece created by the artist, but the difference between digital art and say a painting that you do with your hands is that you can more easily copy a piece of digital art. And that has created the issue that it's difficult to create that aura of scarcity around a piece of digital art. And so the techies out there in the world, of which I kind of am one, I don't create NFTs, just to be clear, but I worked in the tech world. And they have created something called the non-fungible token. Now, if anybody follows cryptocurrency, they'll know that that things like Ethereum or Bitcoin can be traded back and forth because they're all identical. Think of a dollar bill. They're all, except for the serial number, they're all identical. So you can use them as currency and you can buy things and they're all worth the same amount. A non-fungible token is the opposite of that. It's completely unique and it's used to identify a piece of digital art, usually as the original. So for example, when we were kind of going over this topic before, I talked about how I stupidly owned the Batman 2 comic, Batman #2. Today is worth a fortune. Then I traded away for more comic books. But if I had Batman #2 today in a digital format, the only way I could prove that it was sort of the original Batman #2 is with an NFT. So for example, take a painting like the Mona Lisa. It's got a physical form. You can prove its authenticity and you can prove it's the first one. It's more difficult to do that with a digital piece of art. So NFTs essentially create that record that a person purchasing that art owns the very first copy.
Well done.
Mm-hmm.
Good explanation.
It
So
was.
John, what's the deal with the Beeple piece, the NFT that sold for $69 million? Who bought it and why pay $69 million for 5,000 digital pieces of art? Heck, you're on mute.
That's gonna, okay, we've worked through our technical issues now, hopefully. So yeah, yes, this is a very fascinating time to be in the world, and the title of this talk, I think you could also do WTF is Beeple and what in the world is going on in this world. So yeah, so that particular purchase and auction through Christie's, that was bought by a gentleman by the name of Vignesh Sundaresan, I believe is the correct pronunciation of his name. Apologies if I've messed it up a little there. He also goes by Metakoven in the digital worlds. And he's a crypto investor and entrepreneur and collector. And I've listened to some of why his logic around why he purchased this particular piece. And for him, it's kind of a few different things that lead into it. So one is that he does believe that this is kind of a new era in art history, that there's a shift into this new medium of digital first artworks and digitally native artists, and that there's this coming world of sort of where we're more digital and more things are virtual, and so these types of assets and this new medium will matter a lot kind of going forward. And this particular piece, with the level of notoriety around it and the fact that it's one of the biggest and kind of the first large NFT artworks that was purchased, he thinks that's valuable in and of itself. And then he also says that he believes in art patronage, that there's, buying works of art like this do support artists and are, critical for keeping these new creatives and these new mediums actually solvable, you know, and keeping them afloat, so to speak. And then, you know, so the price tag on this one was really high, and nobody knew going into it how much it was ultimately going to be sold for. And this was certainly on the higher end of everybody's expectations. And we can talk a little bit about, you know, kind of the breakdown of this auction itself and the monies that exchanged hands, and then you know, maybe the core value of digital art, or of art in general. So this particular, you know, this piece was it was 5,000 digital works ultimately that were purchased for the $69 million. And you know, if you divide that out, you get 5,000 artworks at 69 million bucks. It's, you know, 13 grand or so for any individual piece there, which maybe isn't that out of, you know, the realm of normalcy for a value of a piece of art that you love. I think another interesting kind of concept to play with here is ultimately what is, you know, valuable within the arts and collectibles world. And Gary did a great job touching on some of these ideas around scarcity and authenticity, being able to verify that there's a unique digital asset. I think that is one of the components that feeds into what makes art valuable, and collectibles in general valuable. I think there's some other intangibles that go along with the value of these things as well. Things like notoriety or cultural impact or significance. I mean, that Batman comic that, and by the way, I really wish you and I had figured out a way to sell that, you know, earlier on. I would have taken that off your hands way earlier. But yeah, that particular piece it's so valuable because of its cultural impact and its significance. And think about the entire, you know, Batman world that's evolved, and, you know, the film franchises and the video games, and how important his characters become. And so there's a lot of the value of art and collectibles that really is intangible. There's not a physical thing. If we take that Mona Lisa piece, the actual physical side of that is, you know, a couple $100 of paint and canvas and wood. After that, everything else is intangible. It's about, you know, culturally, what do we believe about it that gives it its value? And so I think that is some of the thoughts that I have around that particular auction and its value and where the world's headed.
Well, it was very fascinating for sure. And Craig, is this just a trend as an art collector or an artist? Why should I care about NFTs?
Well, a trend. I mean, since we talked a bit, you know, trends are. We don't know if it's a fad. I think is really what some people are. Is this like, you know, a flash in the pan? Is it all going away? And you know, I've only been in the art world for 30 years, and it's never been the same. And so, you know, I'm a computer engineer by training. I was in the computer world. I got sucked into a family business to automate the company. You know, when I came out of school, I worked in some of the very early graphic display systems, developing them. So there's an evolution. I think more in, I'm trying to watch the trend of what is digital in our world, and how is there a digital trend, and how does that dovetail now into the world that I've immersed myself into of the art business, you know, and you know, physically going out to art expos for years. I mean, we were out there in the 80s and the 90s in New York and other art shows, and that physical, tangible opportunity to show somebody. But looking through all of it, how does the digital world that is really evolving exponentially? I'm gonna look back what I did in the late 80s into the early 90s, thinking that we were like on the bleeding edge of technology with, you know, 83, 86 processors and you know, 10 megs of RAM and 25 megahertz of processing power. And then, you know, cresting into the 90s and continuing to, as it evolves, that you know, 10 years ago, a smartphone was really just a nothing. I mean, no one knew what was coming. An iPad didn't exist. The technology of things, you know, so 3 years ago, there was probably only an inkling of what was coming last year. And certainly when everything got pushed into a virtual like this is, this is a two-dimensional virtual experience that we're having because we've had to. And, in that time, I had no idea. I'd heard of augmented reality. I'd heard of virtual reality. My kids played or play video games. And all of a sudden, as things have crested over this last year, that sort of what is melding between physical reality and a virtual and augmented reality, that the digital parts of what we do, sometimes you don't even know. I mean, I'm on my phone and all of a sudden I can see things what look like they are physically in front of me, yet they're not when you look behind. That augmented reality capability is just coming together. So, when I first came into the art business, the idea was, what is art? And I remember having long conversations with you, Eric, at Art Expo and walking the shows and seeing the young artists and the experienced artists and the longtime artists and all the education and everything. And what is it? It's that story. It's the experience that the collector, and my mother started this business 43 years ago, and it was find the art and put it in the home of someone who loves it. How it gets there, it doesn't really matter. So the idea of experiencing that work of art and thinking digitally and seeing the evolution of digital is what we're starting to see, is that an artist may have a new playground to play in digitally, in addition to doing something physically. Because I know a lot of our artists that we publish work digitally to begin with. They don't want to put a brush to canvas until either they get it approved because of the licensing things that we have to go through, but they do it digitally. And so, for me to think about how they worked, and I think one of the things you mentioned, Gary, before was your latest book and your digital writing, and you didn't put pencil or pen to paper. But if in an authenticated way, it were something that I were interested in, or because you're a renowned book author, that to see that digital, composition that you had, the original one before the editor got a hold of it, before your second and third. And then through this last days, I was thinking, well, what if I could see from the very beginning, it logged every change that you made, and I got to experience the way your mind works. And the same way a digital artist in like a Photoshop thing where it logs every part of history, and you could replay that digitally, even if you didn't have the physical thing. So there's not only the 3 dimensions that we're talking about, it's that 4th dimension of time and the development of it that can be captured in so much of this digital world. So is it a trend? I think it's an augmentation to what is already here. And time will tell whether or not anybody cares in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. But I believe that the trend of the melding of a digital world with the physical world is only to get more robust. So I'm excited to see what an artist can do with these new technologies. So I'm enthusiastic about what I'm going to see later this year and next year and beyond. So there you go.
I will say that if somebody wants to pay me $69 million for my first draft, I'm perfectly willing to go there.
Me
That's
too.
great. But it needs an NFT.
I'll do an NFT, even though I'm not their biggest fan.
So,
Excellent.
yeah, you kind of compare it to, like, even Andy Warhol making the soup cans in the 60s, and, and people were considering it art, and digital art could be the same thing. People are going to look at it for 10 years and all of a sudden it's going to take off, or it could take off in 12 months or 6 months, who knows? So John, say I get interested in purchasing digital art. What do I need to enter the digital art collector's world? Tell us about buying a wallet, because that's where you store it, right? And then what's gas?
Yeah, so this particular topic of the evening, I'm going to do a very high level overview, and I'm going to caveat all of this with saying that that there's some good research that you as a collector should do to figure out your particular needs, your use cases, the artwork that you're interested in, where it's located, making sure you're being cautious and staying safe around you know, the right types of platforms that you're transacting with, the right type of wallet that you get, et cetera. So caveats aside, and also we could do this entire talk plus an hour on just the ins and outs of possible ways to navigate this world. So we're going to keep it real short for you though. So the high level, really what you need are three things. One is cryptocurrencies. So those are the actual funds that you're going to be using to buy these digital artworks as a general rule. And then you're going to need a wallet of some sort. And then you're going to need to be, you need to find a platform that you're going to transact with. So where your artist has works for sale. So the highest level, that's kind of what we're operating with. So to get cryptocurrencies, there's a myriad ways. Kind of the simplest version of people that are wanting to jump in and sort of begin exploring is to start with one of the exchanges like Coinbase or Binance. And that's where you can take your dollars, your fiat currency, and transition that into some form of digital currency. So Ethereum or Bitcoin are two of the main types. And then once you've got cryptocurrencies, having a wallet is the other part of it that to very simply put what a wallet is and kind of how it works. A wallet is essentially your way of transacting with the blockchain protocols. So instead of a wallet, you've got your public key and a private key, and that's basically your way to like authenticate and transact within these places. So to trade Ethereum for an NFT, you're going to need a wallet to do that. And then that's also what's essentially your interface into the blockchain backend. So the types of wallets that exist, there's what are known as hot wallets and cold wallets. Hot wallets are internet connected, digital primarily, and then cold wallets are a little a different type that are a physical device usually. And once you've got cryptocurrencies and a wallet that's able to support NFTs, you can go on a journey of exploration into a bunch of different types of platforms that are out there. OpenSea is an example. Lots of different artists are there. There's a company called Foundation is another example where a lot of great artists are having their stuff. Soon Corridor will be a place that you'll go as well to explore this world of digital artworks and NFTs. And so that's kind of the nuts and bolts of getting into the space. Again, make sure you're being cautious and taking care to do good research and keep yourself out of trouble. And then let's talk a little bit, I think you had a question about gas, which is everybody's favorite topic, I'm sure. Without boring you all with the technical details, gas is essentially a way that the Ethereum machine runs on gas. It's the fuel for the engine, so to speak. So every time you're doing a transaction, there's going to be certain operations that have to occur. And each of those operations has some amount of Ethereum required to perform the operation. And that's essentially what gas is. So gas fees fluctuate. The cost associated with doing a transaction fluctuates based on the price of Ethereum at any given point in time. So you may have some transaction that you're trying to do that at one moment in time costs $50 and at some other moment in time costs $1. And it really is just dependent on the price of Ethereum and how complex that transaction is.
Wow.
Tried not to be too technical, but
Eric, I saw your head explode. That's awesome. I love it.
I was going to do an animated version of this,
Yeah.
turn that into an NFT eventually.
We can do that later.
Be a little
That's
song
good.
and dance. Yeah.
I like it.
So,
Oh my goodness.
Gary, the last, well, everybody who's reading about NFTs or Ethereum or the blockchain, and it's obviously requiring a lot of energy to create these things. And every other day you're reading about an environmental impact study on cryptocurrency, right? So Why don't you just give us a couple minute brief on that and how
Sure.
it's affected our environment?
Yeah, and this is why, yeah, I kind of feel like I was brought on the panel because I'm the giant wet blanket. I'm the guy that's going to rain on the NFT parade, you know. And the reason, one of the reasons, I have more than one, but one of the reasons is the impact on power consumption and the environment, and particularly on global warming. And I write a lot about that. The novel that Craig had mentioned is based on the issues of global warming and how it affects our society. So I've done years of research on this, and I've been researching NFTs. And when you take a look at cryptocurrencies, and all NFTs are based on a cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, for example, uses about roughly 115 terawatts of power. And you know, not everybody knows what a terawatt is. I didn't either, but it's about 1 trillion watts for an hour. So it's a lot of power. It's roughly 1/12 of all the wind and solar energy produced in the world annually, a 12th. It's also about 0.5% of all the electricity used by everyone on Earth, and that's just Bitcoin alone. And if Bitcoin was a country, it would be using the same amount or a little bit more electricity than Norway. So it's and it's not the only cryptocurrency. If you take all of them together, of course, it uses more power. Ethereum and Bitcoin together would be, if there are countries, would be the 26th highest consuming country in the world for electricity. So you're talking about a serious amount of power. And at a time when we are bending heaven and earth, trying to reduce our use of electricity, trying to reduce our use of power, and converting everything over to renewables, we are using a significant amount of that power to indulge in cryptocurrencies. So this is why I'm not personally using cryptocurrencies, and I've never invested in them, although I know a fair bit about it. So when you take a look at that, put it against the value, right? So right now, all of that power is being used for about the 100 million people that use cryptocurrencies. 100 million. But there's 7.8 billion people on Earth. Take that figure, you know, that 0.5% times 78, and you start understanding how.
Uh-oh.
Was that me? He ran out of power.
Yeah,
Yeah,
too
that,
many.
okay, Craig, that was really funny.
Oh, Gary,
Oh,
come on
that's
back.
rough.
Come
I
on
think
back.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Explained
Well,
it.
while we're waiting for Gary to come back, and I don't want to negate or you know,
Well,
there.
oh,
Go.
did I
You're
conk out there
back.
for a second? You all look frozen.
Yeah,
Go ahead. You're back. Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the issues too is that, you know, and I will say this in behalf of the cryptocurrencies, Ethereum, for example, is doing more to reduce their power consumption than, say, Bitcoin. And it already uses less. I mean, if you take a look at it, probably less than 1/10 of the amount of power that Bitcoin uses. So it would use about, I believe it's about, let's see, about 38.72 terawatts. So about a third of what Bitcoin is using right now. And they are planning to change the way that they generate Ethereum to reduce the power even more through a new system that they're developing called Casper. So that's all great, but I kind of, being a journalist for so long, I'm kind of the believe it when I see it school. And my personal involvement with NFTs or cryptocurrencies would wait until I see that they're sustainable for the planet.
Well put.
Mhm.
Well put.
And I think that is a serious concern for collectors. I mean, it's all fun until Greta Thunberg shows up. And then all of a sudden, you're all over social media, and you're very unpopular, and that painting you bought is causing you all kinds of trouble, and the government regulators are cracking down on your NFTs. So I think there are some things that could come about over the next year or two that are going to dampen the enthusiasm for NFTs and cryptocurrencies both.
All right, well, we have 2 minutes left. Does anybody, were you going to say something?
Yeah,
Mary?
I was just going to ask, what are your predictions for the future? I mean, you all have such different, you know, inputs on NFTs.
Sure. I'd love to
Go
kick
ahead,
it off,
John.
and I'll try not to use all 2 minutes, but feel free to cut me off, and I'm happy to go over time as well. But so actually, to Gary's point there, I think people are well aware that there are these are very, very early days, and there's lots of opportunities to create better systems to just what Ethereum's doing and their goal of switching to a different less energy intensive system. So there's other things that are in the works. More and more of the proof of work systems are actually going to be moving to renewable energies. Already about 40% of crypto mining is actually done off of renewable energy resources. And so I think that will increase. I think it will become more efficient. And then I think broadly, because it's such early days, there will be a lot of opportunities for things to get less friction filled. So it'll be smoother, it'll be easier. You'll be able to transact more quickly with more people. I think you'll see wider adoption. And then I think we're seeing a transition, as Craig was referencing earlier, to more and more of our life being lived in this combination virtual and digital and physical. And as more of our time is spent in virtual environments and mini metaverses like this one that we're in, we're going to have more types of digital items and digital assets that matter. So I think the art and collectible space is a fantastic NFT use case. And then I think over time, more and more items, physical goods like shoes, so and other fashion related things start to have an NFT component to them as well.
Yeah, I have to agree that I believe that the smart people that develop this may have not thought about how the impact of it may, and the environmental things. But I on that side, I do believe that there will be an economic shift that will change that, and I think it will clean itself. Right now, there's what, $2 trillion of cryptocurrency values sitting out there, and there's enough to make it interested to how do we solve, here's a problem, how do we solve it? And so at least that's my hope and belief, and in smart people and people who care. As far as the art world, to enjoy a digital something, has always been a concern, because okay, I can put it here and I can put it there and I can duplicate it 1 billion times and it's around, everybody enjoys the Mona Lisa copy. But if all of a sudden there is a way with this intelligence to for me or an artist or to create something and say, because digital is my world, I can't paint, I can't draw, I certainly not of anything that anybody wants to collect. But if there is something that is in my digital forefront that I create or am interested in providing, and somebody enjoys it, or an artist creates it and then somebody wants to enjoy it, that there is now a way to digitally authenticate. And so that, I think, is where the excitement comes. That I think, I think of a 3-dimensional sculpture and an augmented reality of me being able to know that this is the one. It's got that little that little check mark on it, like on Twitter. That that's authentic. That's the one, not a copy. We can all enjoy a copy, but to know that it's that one, and I don't know a year from now whether or not I'm going to be having contact lenses like I have that have an augmented reality component to it. I don't know. I don't think I'll go there, but who knows where this virtual reality, augmented reality is going. So yeah, Gary.
Yeah, well, I guess it's my nature to be skeptical in general, and I'm pretty skeptical about the future of NFTs. Not that I think they're going to disappear, and certainly not this year or next year, but I think there's going to be some big highs and some devastating lows as this sector develops. And that's not just because of the climate change part. I mean, the climate activists are definitely circling the wagons. They're painting big bullseyes on NFTs and cryptocurrencies right now, believe me, because I hear from them. But there's other things as well that make it difficult. And one of them is going to be, is that scarcity real or not? Because there are people who are already applying NFTs to artworks they do not own. for example. That's one problem that's happened quite a bit in the art world already. I do see perhaps a bigger role in the licensing world, which is where I play. I'm the editor of the licensing letter. And so that's kind of where I spend all my time. And, you know, we had spoken earlier about this possibility that as we create these digital worlds that Craig spoke of, we can do things like create digital real estate, which a lot of people in the NFT world are talking about. So for example, a clothing company like Zara could go into a digital world, whether it's a video game or something like it, and they could buy real estate and have a store in downtown fake world in a prime location where people can buy stuff, you know, for their characters or their avatars in this world. That kind of thing is happening already. So, you know, places like Roblox, you know, even the boring kind of games that I play are doing these kinds of things. So I think NFTs are going to have a place, but they're going to have to solve a lot of problems, as are the cryptocurrencies themselves, before this really becomes standardized. The cryptocurrencies have other problems in the sense that governments are not that wild about the nature of transactions and make it so easy to transfer huge amounts of money. By the way, I was a crime reporter and investigative reporter for about 24 years. I used to track drug gangs and money laundering all over the Caribbean, Europe, you name it. And in the later days, you know, around 2008 and onwards, as cryptocurrencies emerged, we were tracking money laundering going on. And believe me, that is going to happen in the art world as well. How better to transfer, say, $20 million to someone than to say, oh, hey, here's this artwork, I really want it. Here's 20 million, I have the NFT, and you have the 20 million I needed to launder. Money laundered. If you think governments are not going to come down on that, you're kidding yourself. They are. Absolutely.
I guess the only caveat to that would be, and you're obviously in the midst of it, but there's a lot more trackability in the blockchain for who it is. It may be blind, but there is trackability there. That's the whole idea behind it. So if I'm laundering, you know, I've now signed it and said, this is what I've done. And my stick figure is not worth 20 million. So you're right.
There's a funny story about a drug guy who got nailed just for that exact thing, because he kind of forgot about the anonymity part. And so they tracked it through the blockchain and got him, right? But
yeah, right.
But in any case, yeah,
it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But that
absolutely.
I hadn't thought about that. It'll be interesting to see how that works. So anyway, Eric.
Well, Anna? we have another RAVE event in June, and if things progress like they are now, we'll call all of you back and do another discussion, because I'm sure people would love to hear about it. I want to thank you all for coming, Craig, John, and Gary. Appreciate it very much. And
thanks for the invite.
Insight.
Great to see y'all. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.